David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today, I have for you one of the most recent releases from Visconti, and that would be the Voyager 2020. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of the Voyager 2020, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to Coles of London, the US distributor for Visconti, as well as SD DuPont, for providing these pens on loan for review. And yes, I said pens. I have 5 different models of the Voyager 2020 to show you today. There are 3 variations of the fountain pen. Then I also have a Rollerball and a Ballpoint to give you a peek at as well. Visconti produced their original Voyager model back in the 1990s. Then toward the end of 2019, they produced the Voyager 30 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the company. I do have a review of that pen on my channel if you'd care to check that out. And that brings us to the latest model, the Voyager 2020. It's offered in 3 different materials with names relating to astronomy. There is the Alpha Centauri, the Orion Nebula, as well as the Black Star. The pen arrives in this box, which is a fairly new design for Visconti. Once you remove the lid, however, there's something that I don't think I've seen before with a pen, and that is a little pillow. I've seen things like a little cloth or something like that, but never a pillow that I can recall. It's kind of cool. And then you have the pen. This is the Visconti Voyager, and this is the Alpha Centauri finish. The distinguishing feature of these pens is the layered mother-of-pearl resin used on the cap and barrel and section. On this Alpha Centauri model, it has a bit of an arco-celluloid look to it. There's a lot of variance in the layers and different colors aspects that will make each pen in this series unique. Here's what the Orion Nebula material looks like. It is a nice deep purple. And here is the Black Star. The Black Star's coloring is a little more subtle from a distance or in lower light. It almost looks completely black, but if you have it in the proper light, the patterning and shimmer of the layers really shows. I'll give you a close-up look at all 3 of these pens during the writing sample, but for the sake of this portion of the review, I'm going to focus on the Alpha Centauri model. I think it just shows up a little bit better on camera. Let's take a look at the cap. Sitting on the end is the Visconti V logo. This pen does utilize Visconti's My Pen system, where you can trade out that piece for your initials or a gemstone or things like that. Then we have the traditional hinged and arched clip. These clips are a bit polarizing. There are some folks out there that don't care for them, but I like them. I like that they're a bit different. Now, you can't just operate them like most standard clips. You can't just engage them on material. You need to hold the pen by the clip, and with a simple pinching action, it extends the clip enough to use. And it might take a little bit of getting used to, but whenever I'm using a Visconti pen, I really don't even think about it. It just becomes natural. The cap grows at an even angle, and then at the end of the cap, we have a band. On the front of the band, it is stamped with Voyager, and encircling the rest of the band are a series of alternating Visconti V logos. There is a medium-sized step down to the barrel, and you can see that there's a small gap until you reach the barrel. If the cap would have been posted about 1 millimeter deeper, then it would have covered that up and been a smoother visual transition. Then we have the barrel. It tapers down at an even angle until you reach the end where there is a silver-colored end piece. And inlaid into the very end is a piece of the mother-of-pearl resin. I think that's a nice design choice. The cap is magnetic and slides off. Now, something I noticed about each of the pens that I was provided is that the cap doesn't necessarily slide on effortlessly. There's a bit of tension where you could feel the section making contact with the inside of the cap. Now, with each of these pens, there is kind of a certain cap orientation that have a significant amount of contact requiring much more of a push in order to fully cap the pen. But there's also orientations where the magnet really engages a bit easier and really doesn't need much encouragement. I don't know if that tension will loosen over time, but it's, right now it's more than I care for right out of the box with these pens. The nib is Visconti's in-house 14 karat gold model. It's been out for a while, but I like the new graphic design. It looks modern, yet reminds me of the pinstriping that you see on the side of hot rod cars. The nib is available in extra fine, fine, medium, broad, as well as a stub. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The section is fairly straight. There's less than a millimeter rise from the beginning to the end. And I do like that the section is made from the same material as the cap and barrel. It's much better than a slick metal section. And then there is an angled step up to the barrel. The cap doesn't post that deeply, but it is secure. With the tapered barrel, it does have a bit of that mushroom look that I'm not too fond of, but I don't find the cap to be overly heavy, so if you prefer to post your pens, you could do so comfortably with this model. The Voyager 2020 is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is included. Now, Visconti calls this their luxury converter. On one side of the converter, it is engraved with Voyager, and on the other side, there is a decent-sized ink window. Sometimes for ink windows that don't have windows on both sides, it could be tough to see the ink because there isn't too much light getting in there in order for you to get a good look at your level. I find that that isn't an issue with this converter, though. It's tough to see that from these pictures. The shiny silver-colored material on the inside of this converter does a good job of reflecting back the light when you are looking at it, so you can easily see your ink level. The metal piston knob also feels nicer than standard black plastic ones that you find on a regular converter. I agree with their luxury moniker for this particular converter. And with the metal parts of the section and the barrel, eyedropping this pen would not be recommended. The Visconti Voyager 2020 is available from a wide number of retailers, and you will find it, the full retail price is $695, but at authorized Visconti dealers, you will find it for about 20% less, bringing the cost down to right around $550. I very much care for the resin on these models, especially the Alpha Centauri model. The layers on the other two models are a bit more subtle, but still beautiful. I am a big fan of the Arco celluloid. While I don't feel they were attempting to copy or replicate that look with this material, especially with the broader layers, it does remind me of Arco a bit, and that's not a bad thing. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, a writing sample, and I'll give you a closer look at the other two colors as well as show you both the Ballpoint and Rollerball versions of this pen. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Visconti Voyager 2020. Here's another look at that Alpha Centauri resin here. I just think that looks really nice. I just like the color variation there. And then here is the Orion Nebula, the purple model. It's a nice deep purple. And then finally we have the Black Star. In lower light, then this does look a little bit more black, but then you can see here when the light hits it just right that there is a lot of variance in the color there. And that's what those look like next to each other. In regard to some other Viscontis, this is what it looks like with a Homo sapiens. This is what it looks like with a Vertigo. And this is what it looks like with a Wall Street. And in regard to some non-Visconti pens, here it is with an Omos Mylord in some Arco material. Here it is with a Pelikan M1000. And finally, here it is with a Sailor King of Pen Pro Gear. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, this is what it looks like with the Pelikan M1000 and the Visconti Homo sapiens, as well as the Sailor King of Pen Pro Gear. I mentioned that I'd show the Ballpoint and the Rollerball. This is the Alpha Centauri model of the Ballpoint. You can see that that has a twist mechanism in order to open it up. And then in regard to the Rollerball, it has a very similar look to the fountain pen. This is what the fountain pen looks like, and then this is what the Rollerball looks like. And you can see here that we have the Rollerball. So uncapped, it looks pretty much exactly the same, even with the section is virtually the same to the fountain pen. But it's nice. For the writing sample, I decided to use this Orion Nebula. This one has a fine nib that I liked a lot, so I thought I would use this one for the writing sample. So we have the Visconti Voyager 2020. This is a fine 14 karat gold nib. And the ink that I'm using today is one of my favorite Visconti inks, which is Visconti Turquoise. And this is what the ink looks like. It's a nice vibrant blue that has a bit of a pop to it. It's very similar to something like Lamy Pacific Blue, or even Pilot Iroshizuku Ama-Iro is a little bit lighter than the Lamy and the Visconti are somewhat similar in regard to density. This is the Visconti bottles. I always like these bottles. It does a good job of kind of filtering the ink down so you can get it when it's low in the bottle. Plus, I just kind of like the unique look of these bottles. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. As I mentioned, I really care for this fine nib. I don't find it to be scratchy. You can get a little bit of line variance out of here, but I find it to be fairly smooth. The ink flow out of this fine nib is decent in regard to some reverse writing. It is a little bit sharp, but it does lay down an extra fine line. And in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. So here we have the Visconti Voyager 2020. I think these are interesting pens. They perform nicely. I like Visconti's new nibs that they have, and I really like the variants in the material as well, especially the Alpha Centauri. I think of the three, that's my favorite of the color schemes. But all three of them look nice. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.